Mayor Thomson, thank you for making the time to speak today. I know we are 1 year down in your first year as mayor. Looking back, I want to go back to the May 2023 primary. You know, being in Monroe County, we are pretty much a Democratic county. What do you think stood out for as a candidate to a field of Democratic candidates? What helped you punch through all the competitors?
I think Bloomington was really ready for a change, I came from outside. I was the only candidate that was not in elected office, had not been heavily involved with even the party in the past. But the other thing is that I have a really strong housing background. And in this moment, not just in Bloomington, but throughout our entire country, housing is it. It is the focus for our country. We all need it, and Bloomington is no different. And so my vision for providing attainable housing to Bloomington, I think was pretty critical for many voters. And
I did want to talk on that issue. I know that was a topic that we discussed over the summer when it came to addressing homelessness in Bloomington. We're getting closer to the winter months. It's already cold out there right now. Looking back at the proposal that you guys have already put forward this past summer with this housing action plan, do you see success so far? It's only been a few months, but are you already starting to see some indicators of how this plan is working?
We are. There's subtle changes right now, but we are seeing what we believe are decreased numbers right now. And several steps have been put into place. We are working with a community foundation on a fund that should be announced relatively shortly to do reunification for people who may have come here thinking that there were housing resources here for them and then found that there were none. So reunify them with the communities where they have a support network. And then, of course, our emergency winter shelter that's faith-based is already up and running. And we are really looking to provide additional funding through several different streams for case management and really some services that will help us help people where they are get to the next step of housing.
For some people who are experiencing homelessness, there's something about going to a shelter that they just don't like, that they'll push to the side. How do you reach those people who need that help? You give them options of shelters, faith-based shelters, but they don't want to take it because they feel like they lose a part of their personal freedom. What's the message to them when they want to make Bloomington their home, but there's just nowhere to live?
Well, I think that, what we need ultimately is permanent housing for folks. But congregate shelters, which are sort of the shelters that we all think of, where there's bunk beds and in a large room, they don't work for many people, especially if you're going to be sheltered for a significant amount of time. And so there's really a move nationwide to build non-congregate shelters. So you would maybe have a roommate, or you may have a single room with shared bathroom facilities in that shelter. And so several of our shelter providers now are moving in that direction. One won't open until 2 years from now. That's Beacons. But New Hope for Families already has non-congregate shelters, and those are working really, really well, and people feel really welcomed and safe in them.
When it comes to the issue of affordable housing, people don't think there's enough options in Bloomington. Does student housing play a role in that problem? Companies that want to come here just to build student-oriented living, is that part of the issue?
Well, student housing for a long time in our country, really since the housing crash, has been some of the most secure investment for multinational investors, because students are always going to be here, they're always going to be renting, and those students don't have to source their income from our local community. They do, but usually their parents are paying for that housing. And so, yes, the supply and demand is definitely driven by students, and the income that is used to pay for housing is much more significant than the relatively low median income that we have here in Bloomington. So does it play a role? Yes. And we really are focused our zoning and our incentives at creating housing that's targeted to people who work here in Bloomington, especially as IU is talking about leveling off their undergraduate admissions. hopefully we have enough student housing now, and so we need to really focus on housing for the workforce.
I kind of want to stay on that similar topic of IU because it is a big part of Bloomington, a big part of the local economy. It's also a big employer here.
Of course.
What has the communication been like with the IU administration now that we have a new mayor and a new administration in office? What's that communication been like?
The Whitten administration and my team are in very active communication. Sometimes President Whitten and I are directly communicating, but our cabinets and leadership levels are working together every day on different things: the streets, the planning, safety, et cetera. And so it's extremely important that we really work in partnership to whatever extent possible. And in fact, we have started meeting our leadership teams together. And we have picked out a few projects that we're going to work on in the coming years together strategically to try to improve them for the whole community.
There has been a moment, though, where we publicly saw a disagreement between a university response and what you thought about how the university handled it when it came to the April arrests out here in Dunn Meadow. You made it clear that wasn't necessarily the city's involvement. What was the communication like during those times, and was it a collaborative work, if you will? Was it good communication?
I think we learned a lot about when we need to communicate and how to communicate ahead of time in those kinds of situations. I think any community leader, whether they're at the university or in the city, wants to know when we're going to have significant outside police involvement, when there is any perceived threat to our safety, and to whatever extent we can safely collaborate together on a plan. I think all parties think that that's the best approach.
You ran on this message of transparency, increasing transparency in government. Now that in these last few weeks we've seen some disagreements between you and council when it comes to certain measures and actions that they've taken, do you think that we are seeing a more transparent government here in Bloomington?
We're working towards it. I think we can all get into patterns of expedient communication. It's not always fast to be transparent and to include the public in decision making and in the sharing of information. And frankly, I think I have a little bit of an advantage because I don't have any habits in government yet. And so I can see from an outsider's perspective some opportunities for opening things up for the general public and for sharing the decision making quite openly, even if it's not a pleasant discussion. And that's really important to me because I think in this post-COVID age, where we have gotten so used to instant messaging and communicating through texts and not doing face-to-face communications, we have really, as a country, shied away from disagreeing with each other. And, your disagreements with me can only improve my ideas, whether we end up agreeing in the end or not. And so I think it's really important for government to model that for our people.
And when it comes to voters on the other side of the aisle that, they haven't had their voice represented in a way here in Bloomington for quite some time, how have you connected with those voters who might not necessarily agree with your platform and your policies, but have had open dialogue with you and with other public officials?
Yeah, in my mind, there is no other side of the aisle. I serve Bloomington. No matter what your party is, no matter what your viewpoints are, I'm here to serve you. And so there are key issues that people may disagree with me on. And it's important to me that I hear from them and I hear what their concerns are. Sometimes the concerns are not based in what's actually going to happen. There's just not enough information out there, and so I can share that. And other times, there are concerns happening that I didn't know about. And it's important that my team understands what's really happening on the ground so that we can help the community fix that.
Kind of sticking on that same note, we're coming into a new year with a new administration at the federal government. What kind of impact will that play when it comes to getting your specific platform and policy ideals pushed in what could be a questionable time in federal government?
Well, I think what I'm focused on is how some of the issues really are nonpartisan. There is a housing bill that mayors on both sides of the aisle are working on. We've been working on it with the forecast that we don't care who's in the White House, we need to do something about housing nationwide. There also is some bipartisan agreement on helping with mental health and substance use disorder. And I think it's really important that we focus on those things without partisan politics playing a role as much as we can. And there are certainly other issues that I won't agree with President Trump on, and hopefully we can address some of those on a local level.
And you've made a big push when it comes to focusing locally. I know that there was some questions a few months back when it came to council pushing forward a ceasefire or a resolution asking for a ceasefire, and you said Bloomington needs to just focus on Bloomington. Is that something we can expect to see in the next remaining 3 years of your term?
What you can expect to see, and I think what I said, rather than Bloomington just needs to focus on Bloomington, is that it's not really in our purview to do international relations. My role as a mayor is to execute the actions of basic safety and services for our people and the programming that goes along with that executive branch of government. And likewise, our council then is the legislative branch that serves the Bloomington people. I will continue to focus in that way. And if there are issues on the national level that are deeply affecting our people here in Bloomington, that my role can have a part to shaping and changing, I absolutely will step in.
And you've had some pretty big events happen throughout your first year, and some notable policies and actions that not only city council has taken, but county council as well. What's been some of the biggest things that you've seen accomplished so far in just one short year?
Well, of course, the thing that sets the stage for the rest of our work is building a really incredibly strong cabinet. And so if you look at my cabinet, you'll see that the new folks, many of them came from the private sector in one way or the other, either nonprofit or for-profit. There is some innovation there, and that is on purpose. How we do government should be able to pivot with our time and be responsive to the community that we're serving. So building that really talented cabinet team, of course, paved the way for the rest of our work. Most notably, in the past couple of months, we have really heavily invested in public safety in a number of ways, but importantly, both fire and police renegotiated their contracts with us. And for the first time in anyone's memory, we have unanimous votes on both of those contracts. So we're taking care of those public safety folks. And we have the most pivotal salary ordinance that has been passed in decades here in Bloomington. That will help us retain top talent to serve our city.
And one issue that seems to carry over from administration to administration is annexation. Right. I know that there's been recent rulings and the city's continuing. What are you looking forward to when it comes to the potential for annexation to actually become a reality? I know it's been several years in the works now.
What is really important to understand about annexation is that our city and county economy and our ability to grow economically depend on the city boundaries having some elasticity. Throughout the United States, anytime a city's boundaries get locked, the city and the region around it begin to really start to decline economically. There's not room for business growth. There's not room for housing growth, and so annexation, I think, for the city and the county, is a top concern, so that we can continue to really be a thriving community. And the only way that we're going to be able to do that is through annexation. Last week at the school board meeting, they had a demographer come give them a report that, in fact, with the declining population that we're seeing, they're considering closing schools. It's really important that we start looking to our future. We haven't had any annexation in the past 20 years, and it already is hurting us. And so, and again, it's for the county and the city. And next Monday from 5:30 to 6:30 at the Southwest branch of the Public Library, I'll be having a listening session for county residents who want to understand more about annexation, want to share with me what their concerns are. And I'm really looking forward to meeting some folks who have annexation on their minds.
You mentioned focused on the future. Besides affordable housing, what's going to be top of mind for you when we turn the calendar to 2025?
Our identity as a city. You ask anybody in Bloomington what they love about Bloomington, why are you here? And for most of us, it takes us 10 or 20 minutes to list all of the things that are special about Bloomington. But we have a really hard time articulating that thing. What is it? And describing it. And we all use different words. It's important that we're able to do that, because differentiating ourselves in today's world is critical. It's critical to attracting that population growth. It's also critical to our business growth and articulating what kinds of sector development we're really going to specialize here. If we try to be everything to everybody, we will be nobody. And so we already have some specialties that have emerged that we're really good at, but there are a few others that are starting to emerge. And so we will be investing in some work that will help the community articulate who we are, what's special about us, and where we're headed. And that will really set the stage for our economic development, but also a lot of pride of place.